Something big just happened inside the White House, and it caught almost everyone off guard. Early Monday morning, the same story leaked to multiple news outlets at once. Within hours, Donald Trump jumped on Truth Social and denied it, angrily. So what's going on? At the center of it all is one man, General Dan Caine. This isn't just any military official. He's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. He's one of Trump's most trusted voices on war. And he helped plan recent major operations. But behind closed doors, something changed. In a high-level meeting last week, Caine reportedly told Trump, "Don't strike Iran." Not because it's impossible, but because it's dangerous. He warned that a war could spiral, that it might drag the U.S. into something long and costly, and that the outcome isn't as predictable as it seems. This wasn't a public statement. This was private advice, inside the room where decisions are made. And it gets more interesting. Reports say the U.S. is already stretched, low on key munitions, uncertain about ally support, and facing the risk of a prolonged conflict. In other words, this wouldn't be quick. Now here's the twist. Trump says none of this is true. He called the reports 100% incorrect and insisted that Caine is fully on board if action is taken. So now there are two completely different stories. Publicly, confidence. Privately, caution. And one more detail most people missed. The commander who would actually run the war day to day, CENTCOM Chief Brad Cooper, has reportedly not even been in the room for these discussions. That's unusual, because if a strike happens, he's the one executing it. So right now, the real question isn't just if something happens. It's this: when the people closest to power don't agree, what happens next? He's not in the room. He's not being consulted. And the one general who is in the room, he's telling Trump to slow down. Within hours of the story breaking, Donald Trump jumped on Truth Social and fired back. He called the reports fake, said General Dan Caine is not against striking Iran, and if war happens, it will be easily won. That's Trump's public line, easily won. But here's the problem. Privately, Caine reportedly warned about munitions shortages, weak Allied support, heavy U.S. casualties, and the risk of getting dragged into something long and brutal. Those two versions can't both be true, and this wasn't one shaky source. Axios, The Washington Post, The Wall Street Journal. All reported the same thing, all within hours, all citing people with direct knowledge of what happened in that room. That gap between what was reportedly said in private and what was declared in public might be the most important national security gap in America right now. Because if this turns into war, that gap will decide how history judges it: smart and decisive, or reckless and catastrophic. Now let's talk about the part almost no one is focusing on: munitions. This is where it gets serious. General Caine reportedly warned that key weapons systems are running low. Not minor equipment, the systems America depends on in a major Middle East fight. First, THAAD, the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System. It's the only U.S. system designed to shoot down high-altitude ballistic missiles outside the atmosphere. There aren't many of these batteries in the world. Several are already deployed to protect allies from Iranian missiles. Supply? Tight. Second, Patriot missile systems. These are the backbone of air defense, protecting troops and cities from cruise missiles and lower-altitude ballistic threats. Also heavily used, also depleted. Third, Tomahawk cruise missiles, launched from ships. These would likely open any strike campaign, but they've been used repeatedly in operations across Yemen, Syria, and in prior strikes tied to Iran. Stockpiles aren't unlimited. And here's the strategic nightmare scenario. If the U.S. burns through large amounts of air defense munitions in a conflict with Iran, it doesn't just affect the Middle East. It weakens America's ability to protect regional allies from Iranian retaliation and prepare for a future conflict with China. That's not just a regional issue, that's global strategy. So when someone says a war would be easily won, but the top military advisor is reportedly warning about limited defenses, stretched supply lines, and rising casualty risks, that's not a small disagreement. That's a flashing red light. And whether that light gets ignored or taken seriously could define what happens next. Counter China. That line, buried in reporting from the Wall Street Journal, changes everything. Because this isn't just about Iran. America's military doesn't plan for one war at a time. It plans for a world where multiple flashpoints explode at once. Iran, China, Russia, North Korea. That's the real chessboard. Every Patriot missile battery sent to defend a base in Qatar is one that can't defend Taiwan. Every THAAD interceptor fired in the Middle East is one less available for the Korean Peninsula. So when General Dan Caine talks about munitions shortages, he's not just talking tactics. He's talking about America's entire global deterrence strategy. Now here's what makes this even more interesting. Caine isn't the only one urging caution. Inside Trump's inner circle, several powerful voices are quietly pumping the brakes. Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff, J.D. Vance, all reportedly pushing for diplomacy, slowing this down, asking hard questions about getting pulled into something bigger than expected. On the other side, pressure from Benjamin Netanyahu and Trump's own instinct to project maximum force. That's the split. And it's happening in real time. The most serious national security debate since the decision to invade Iraq in 2003. Now here's the key difference. Caine was fully on board with the Venezuela operation. Why? Because Venezuela was a targeted raid. One objective, one man. A military leadership already compromised. Key officials had been turned. The path was cleared before the first move was made. It worked because the system was hollowed out. Iran is the opposite. Its military leadership hasn't been bought. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps isn't loyal because of paychecks. It's loyal because of ideology. Iran's power structure is layered. Take out the top commander, the next one steps in. No chaos, no vacuum. And its missile arsenal? Thousands of weapons, many pre-targeted and pre-authorized. They don't need a leader alive to launch. It's essentially a built-in dead man's switch. Caine knows this. He's studied it. He's war-gamed it. That's why this warning matters. Because this isn't fear-talking, it's calculation. In that classified meeting last week, General Dan Caine reportedly told Trump something uncomfortable. Operation Midnight Hammer, more than 200 aircraft, B-2 bombers, the full weight of U.S. air power, did not destroy Iran's nuclear program. It slowed it down. Iran rebuilt. And now, according to the briefing, it's about a week away from weapons-grade enrichment. Let that sink in. The operation Trump calls one of his greatest military successes may be the same operation that created the crisis sitting on his desk right now. But here's the detail almost nobody is talking about. Buried in reporting from Axios and the Wall Street Journal is this. The head of United States Central Command, Admiral Brad Cooper, hasn't spoken to Trump since January. This is the man who would actually run the war. He controls U.S. forces across 21 countries, the Persian Gulf, the Arabian Sea, the Red Sea. His headquarters was even evacuated from Qatar anticipating Iranian retaliation. And he's not in the room, not consulted, not invited. Think about that. America could be days away from striking one of the most capable military powers in the region. And the commander who would execute the operation hasn't been part of the decision-making for weeks. Instead, only Caine is in the room. And Caine, the man Trump installed, the man who planned Midnight Hammer, the man Trump publicly says believes the war would be easily won, is reportedly warning behind closed doors. The risks are serious. The munitions are short. Allied support is thin. And escalation is real. There's another phrase in those reports that deserves way more attention: an overworked force. America's military has been in nonstop operations or high alert since September 2001. That's 24 straight years. Rotations, deployments, counter-terror missions, now layered on top of high readiness against Iran, Russia, China, and North Korea. The pilots flying those aircraft, the crews maintaining the ships, the teams loading the missiles. It's largely the same generation that's been doing this for 2 decades. Equipment can be replaced. People can't, at least not quickly. And that's the quiet warning underneath all of this. This isn't just about one strike. It's about how stretched the system already is, and what happens if it snaps. The fatigue is real. Retention problems? Real. Munitions shortages? Also real. What General Dan Caine described isn't abstract. It's what happens when a military burns through stockpiles faster than the factories can replace them. Now look at Trump's public response. Easily won. We have the most powerful military in the world. That's not a detailed rebuttal. It's a political message. Because the second Donald Trump publicly admits his top general has doubts, the pressure campaign against Iran weakens. The threat only works if Iran believes America will actually pull the trigger. If Tehran senses hesitation inside the U.S. military, the leverage drops. At the same time, Trump says he'd rather have a deal. He calls the Iranian people great and wonderful. But he also warns of a very bad day if talks fail. It's calibrated language. Door open, sword raised. He hasn't decided. Talks are scheduled in Geneva. Proposals are reportedly close. Deadlines have come and gone. Inside his circle, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff are pushing diplomacy. Meanwhile, the man who planned the last strike is warning the next one carries serious risk. And the head of United States Central Command, Admiral Brad Cooper, still hasn't been in the room. History has seen this moment before. Afghanistan drained the Soviet Union. Iraq damaged America's credibility for years. Yemen became a stalemate. Libya became a failed state. Before each one, leaders believed the same thing. It would be quick. It would be decisive. It would be easily won. And in each case, military officials quietly raised concerns about supply lines, about allies, about what happens after the first strike. General Caine isn't anti-war. He's against launching one, with short munitions, without the operational commander in the room, with limited allied backing, against a system built to survive the first punch and keep fighting. That's not fear. That's institutional memory. It's what you learn after 20-plus years of watching the gap between political confidence and battlefield reality swallow entire strategies. Now the talks move to Geneva. And the question isn't just whether there will be a strike, it's whether the people making the decision are listening to the people who would have to carry it out. The talks either work, or they don't. The Iranian proposal either lands, or it falls apart. And somewhere between Truth Social and the Situation Room, Donald Trump is making a decision. He says he wants a deal. But he's also weighing the advice of the one general he trusts most, Dan Caine, the same general who helped build the last strike, and who is now, reportedly, telling him in private that this next one is different, riskier, more complex, harder to control. That's the heart of it. When America's top general is said to be warning against a war behind closed doors, and the president publicly says that same general believes it would be easily won. That contradiction isn't noise, it's the story. Because in moments like this, the gap between private caution and public confidence is where history gets made.